Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new day with the top 10 topics of October 26, 2021. So, all of us as civil service aspirants, we should remember one thing very well, that our success is not determined by one big leap that we take, but it is determined by the very small steps that we take every day. So, one of those very small steps is being aware and being ready with the current affairs of the day. And this initiative is mainly meant for that. So, let us move forward with the top 10 topics of today. The first is a statement by Fitch Ratings from the Hindu, which says that the energy crisis to keep the commodity prices high in the near term. This is what the ratings agency says. Now, this is useful from the GS paper 3 and also with your GS paper 2, especially the government policies and with respect to infrastructure and the energy sector. So it says that no immediate solution is seen to the power crisis and the rates of the agriculture commodities may rise. Now, let me tell you that energy is a key input for production and manufacturing. An increase in the energy prices affects the prices of other commodities as they use energy as either a fuel or to power the other equipments. And we all know that leads to inflation, which is increase in prices. Now, energy prices depend on various factors. Let us see what are they. The fuels used to produce the energy, the cost of their production, etc., power plant cost, then transmission distribution system and the efficiency in the transmission and distribution system, and also the regulations and the government policies. For example, your taxation, subsidies, etc. Now, the agriculture food prices respond positively to any shock from oil prices. Inflation in the oil price is harmful for both the energy security and also the threatens the food security. It is very necessary to diversify, therefore, the energy consumption in the agriculture sector. Energy price rise especially has its impact on food security because this has a direct impact on the other prices of the food basket. Now, energy crisis has its bearing on the global commodity prices, and especially if that country has a greater role in the trade of the global economy, then any item which is produced in that country and it is affected by the energy crisis. Now, the energy crisis has led to the repercussions in global metals, especially from China, and this has impacted both production and consumption of metals, ultimately tightening the markets. So, the energy crisis presently, what India and the world over is going through, has actually threatened the green offshoots of economic recovery of the recent times, especially the post pandemic period. At the right side, you can see a picture as I showed you that it's the common man that bears the brunt of price rise and also the energy prices. Now, both supply and demand side factors have contributed to the current prices. I've spoke about this previously. Let us just review it again. Now, the coal-fired power plants failed to maintain the minimum coal reserves. They have used them without replenishing them due to the fall in imports and supply. Also, the erratic rainfalls in India have led to flooding of the coal pits in the dry season, significantly disrupting the coal supplies. India's post pandemic economic recovery has heightened the demand for resources, especially power. There has been a mismatch between demand and supply. At a more fundamental level, there is poor efficiency of the coal fired power plants, and this has precipitated the current crisis. A recent study found that the net thermal efficiency of the coal fired power plants in India is 29.7% only compared to the weighted world average of 37%. The current crisis therefore underscores the need for reforms in the power sector. So, what are the immediate reforms that the government can look at? It can bridge the massive deficit in energy generation from non renewable sources. I think in yesterday's slide, I have spoken about why natural gas is not a viable solution to bridge the power deficit or an alternative to coal. This calls for more concerted efforts by the government to scale up the financing options, especially to support the renewable sources of energy. I'm sorry, I made the mistake in the first statement. Bridging the massive deficit in energy generation from renewable sources. Facilitating single window clearance process for the projects, creating awareness about the solar benefits especially among the consumers, using of rooftop solar installation mainly in rural households for capacity augmentation and also in agriculture lands. Now let us move to the second most important topic, that is Indo-Pacific will become the center of the world, and this has been said by the British High Commissioner in an interview which has been given in the Hindu today. This is very useful for your GS paper 2, especially India and world, and also emerging policies of various government which have an impact on India. We have also seen that recently the India UK summit has been taken in March, where they had been laid the roadmap of 2030. So last week we had the British Foreign Secretary Truss, who visited India and said that India was an essential partner for the free, open, inclusive and a prosperous Indo-Pacific. And also the British High Commissioner elaborates on UK's interest in the region. The port staff of HMS Queen Elizabeth in Mumbai was termed as UK's India-Pacific tilt in action. Now, UK, along with many countries, are calling for an open, rule-based, secure Indo-Pacific. Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2015 had articulated his vision for an Indo-Pacific in one word, that is Sagar, security and growth for all in the region. He said that it must serve as a guiding principle for all nations, as a secure and stable Indo-Pacific equals peace and prosperity for all, especially keeping in mind China's action in the region. Now, what are the important points that are making everybody to focus on the Indo-Pacific region? Let us see. First of all, Indo-Pacific region has become a limelight for some time, and this we have seen in many multilateral fora and bilateral talks. Every time the Indian Prime Minister has a meeting with the other dignitaries or the heads of state of other countries in various international organization, regional organization, there is an important point coming up from Indo-Pacific region, and it is mainly aimed at China without actually naming the country and asking for a rule-based order in the region. It contributes to more than half of the world's GDP and population. Especially the demography of your region, if you see, is mainly of young population. The markets are unexplored yet to the full extent. There is a lot of potential. The region is very rich in natural resources. It is a pathway to half of the world's energy. The market in this region is growing. Therefore, the motivation for any bloc or any country comes from the sheer size, population, resources of the markets. The Indo-Pacific has everything that gives it to form a bloc and can also help in determining the policies of the future and play a very important role in the Indo-Pacific region. This have been said by international relation analysts various times in many interviews. Many countries have come out with Indo-Pacific region, India being one of them. Let us see who are they. It has been ASEAN, EU, Sri Lanka, South Africa. Today's countries and many blocs are pledging to join this league. Let us see what is India's policy and its take on the Indo-Pacific region. Now, the Prime Minister's speech at the Shangri-La Dialogue in 2018 provided a fillip to the Indo-Pacific region. He called for a free, open, prosperous and inclusive Indo-Pacific. Besides economic relation, India's security partnership with the countries in Indo-Pacific such as US, Japan, Australia and several ASEAN countries have expanded in the recent years. We have seen many of these countries asking India to play a major role in this region. and they also recognize India as a key player of this region. Both Indian External Affairs Minister and the Foreign Secretary have kept the Indo-Pacific region active and shaping the posture of international affairs. There have been regular meetings, especially virtual meetings in the COVID 19. In 2019, the ASEAN launched the Outlook on Indo Pacific, and India introduced the Indo Pacific Oceans Initiative. This was a major step by ASEAN in India. Now, these two versions have given a fillip to the emerging Indo Pacific construct. With the announcement of the ASEAN Outlook on Indo Pacific and the Indo Pacific Ocean Initiative in 2019, Indo Pacific has started receiving attention globally from even more number of countries. So, this is a very important topic because this has been a topic of discussion, as I said, in various multilateral fora and also bilateral forum, and is a very prospective main question also. So, we have seen why the Indo Pacific region is important and what are the initiatives that are turning the attention towards this region, what are steps taken by India to define its policy, and how ASEAN also has come up with the Indo Pacific outlook. Many countries are bringing out their own visions of Indo Pacific. Every country wants to benefit from this burgeoning market, young population, and also resource rich region. Now let us move on to the next topic, that is the Tourism Ministry has identified 3 more iconic tourist destinations, and this has been in news even in the Hindu today. It is very important from the GS paper 1 of culture. Now the iconic tourist destination is a central sector program which not only attracts tourists to India but also preserves the culture of India. Now, the Ministry of Tourism has added 3 more tourist destinations, that is the Konark Sun Temple of Odisha, Kevadia in Gujarat, Golconda Fort in Telangana, to the current list of 17 iconic sites. All these proposed sites are a part of the UNESCO World Heritage List. They are very popular among the tourists and have a decent footfall. The iconic tourist sites, the objective is to attract foreign and domestic tourists with the development of the required infrastructure for the benefit of the tourist and the comfort of the tourist. Now, the iconic tourist destination is implemented under the ongoing Swadeshi Darshan scheme of the Ministry of Tourism. As I said before, it is a central sector program for development of 19 identified iconic destinations in the country following a holistic approach. Now, the aim of the scheme is develop these iconic tourist sites with better tourism infrastructure such as connectivity, facilities for the tourists, involvement of the local community so that they can benefit in the form of employment and its promotion. Let us see what are the tourist sites that are being developed under the iconic destination. They are Taj Mahal and Fatehpur Sikri in Uttar Pradesh. Remember, the places and the states they are located is important from the prelims point of view. Ajanta Caves and Ellora Caves in Maharashtra, Humayun's Tomb, Red Fort, Qutub Minar in Delhi, Kolwa Beach in Goa, Ajmer Fort in Rajasthan, Somanath Dolavira Statue of Unity in Gujarat, Khajuraho in MP, Hampi in Karnataka, Mahabalipuram in Tamil Nadu, Kaziranga in Assam, Kumaramkom in Kerala, Konark in Odisha, and the Mahabodhi temple in Bihar. I've just given you the pictures of these 3 places that have been added along with a very brief description on them. Let us see Konark. Now, it is located in the Puri district of Odisha and it is called as the Black Pagoda, and it is built in the 13th century by Narasimha Deva I. It is home to the annual dance festival called as the Konark Dance Festival, and it is a World Heritage Site. Kevadia in Narmada district of Gujarat is the home to the famous Statue of Unity, and the famous tourist sites such as Butterfly Park, Sardar Sarovar Dam are located here. The Statue of Unity is a statue of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. Now, Golconda Fort is built and is synonymous with the Qutub Shahis. It is built by the Kakatiyas and it was the capital city of Qutub Shahis. It is located close to the Kollur mines and it was very famous for diamonds. The region has produced some of the world's famous diamonds, including Kohinoor, Blue Hope, Darya-e-Noor, and White region. The next important topic of the day is a report which says of the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation that says that one out of the five infrastructure projects faces delay of over 5 years. Now, this is a matter of concern because this not only leads to cost overruns but also leads to litigation and increase in the bank NPAs. On one hand, India is happy of launching various programs for the development of infrastructure and pushing in investment. But on the other hand, the government has to keep in mind that these infrastructure programs will become viable and benefit the related sectors only if they are completed on time and more beneficial if they are completed beforehand so that there is reduction in the cost that is charged for the infrastructure development. Let us see what does the report say. The center has issued a strict advisory to different ministries and departments to reduce delays and cost overruns that have reached a staggering 4.30 lakh crore in 1670 central state sector projects. Now, if you look at the figure of 4.30 lakh crore, we can identify this number with the various programs which are being developed under the National Investment Pipeline. If you see the money catered to them also, this money can cover almost easily 3 to 4 sectors under the pipeline. So this is now become a staggering amount for cost overruns. 21.66 lakh crore was the present anticipated completion cost, but now it is around 26 lakh crore, reflecting a cost overrun of almost 25%. So the report, as I said, is given by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, and the 1670 project pertain to 25 sectors such as road, railways, petroleum, coal, etc. What are the reasons? Now the report has also listed 15 reasons. Let us see what are they. Lockdowns in the state due to COVID, law and order problems, delay in land acquisition, obtaining of forest and environmental clearance, contractual issues, inadequate manpower, among others, lack of coordination among various central ministries, departments, and the state government, local bodies. It also highlighted problems in preparing of progress report. Basically, the monitoring, surveillance, and the auditing of the projects has been hit. The online computerized monitoring system of the Statistics Ministry envisages monitoring of the milestones of various infrastructure projects. The project authorities have been regularly requested to enter the list of milestones for each project for better monitoring. However, not even this has been done. So, this calls for strict monitoring, strict milestones to be ensured that are achieved in the project completion, supervision at multiple times, and ensuring that the project is actually completed before time rather than crossing the time that is taken to complete the project. This will not only solve problems of NPAs but also save the precious taxpayers' money and lead to the government having money to spend in other development areas. Let us see what are the effects of delay. As I have said before, overrun, disputes, lawsuits, litigation, bank sectors affected by NPA abandonment. The next important topic is anti-diabetic medicines get a price cap. Now, the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, which controls the prices of pharmaceutical drugs, has said that to make the diabetes medicines affordable, it has capped the prices of 12 anti-diabetic generic medicines. Price efficiency and also cost of medicines play a very important role. The economic survey has highlighted that how out-of-pocket expenditure is pushing many people to poverty. Now, the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority publishes a list of medicines and also determines the maximum ceiling prices over which the drugs cannot be sold. This step of this pricing authority ensures that the drugs are made affordable to the people who suffer from these diseases. The price of medicines are a sensitive issue in our country because out-of-pocket expenditure is very high in India for healthcare, and this is one of the challenge along with infrastructure for healthcare delivery in India. others being many other which I will be discussing later, especially with respect to the question and answers of the week with regard to mains 2022. This pushes many people to poverty. Many people lack the insurance cover to protect them during the ailment, and this was seen especially during the COVID 19 pandemic, where the government has come with a with the health insurance cover of 1.5 lakh. If I'm not sure, I'm sorry, I need to check on that detail. But the government had come up with the insurance cover and asked all the various other companies also to offer the similar insurance package to many people. The price controls have become an important tool in the government hands to make drugs affordable. Another important step that the government is taking to make drugs affordable is the Jan Aushadhi stores by selling the generic form of the drugs. The Ministry of Health draws up a national list of essential medicines. This should be remembered. These medicines, deemed essential for treatment of certain conditions, automatically come under the Drug Price Control Order. In India, the drug prices are controlled by a Drug Price Control Order which is issued under the Essential Commodities Act of 1955. It is governed by the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Policy, and a national list for essential medicines is formulated. Now, the Drug Price Control Order is very useful in controlling the prices of life saving drugs that are very essential in healthcare and certain diseases. The survey, I've highlighted certain important highlights of the survey which it had said about the out of pocket expenditure in the country. It said that India has one of the highest level of out of pocket expenditure, contributing to high incidence of catastrophic expenditure, poverty. Now, the out of pocket expenditure as a share of total healthcare expenditure drops when the public health expenditure increases, and public health expenditure increases when the government pumps in more money for the health sector. It suggested that the public spending or the government spending should increase from 1 lakh to 2.53% of the GDP as envisaged in the National Health Policy. This can decrease the out of pocket expenditure from 65% to 30%. The survey also observes that the health of the nation depends upon the citizens having access to equitable, affordable, accountable healthcare system, which is also set in the Sustainable Development Goals. It also says that life expectancy in a country correlates positively with the per capita public health expenditure. The next most important topic is only UP has issued oil stock limits. Now, this is useful in GS paper 3, especially with regard to policies related to the agriculture and allied activities, crops, etc. Government is putting its effort to curb the prices of edible oils. We have seen recently in the economy that the news of high prices of edible oils has been making news. In this process, now UP has notified stock limits for retailers, wholesalers, refiners, and bulk consumers so that there is no hoarding and control of price. The Uttar Pradesh government has imposed stock limits in the range of 1 to 25 tons for different stakeholders. Rajasthan, Gujarat, Haryana are at the final stage of notifying stock limits for edible oil. Let us look into few points as actually why this edible oil crisis has now come about. What are the reasons for it? The irony is that the boom in edible oil prices is happening during a period of low demand and caused by the stretch of normal monsoons. There has been record oilseed production, and also there have been recent lockdowns in the country. Now, the price rise, it is said that it is an international phenomena. Let us look at certain data with respect to the edible oil production in the country. Now, India's production of oilseed has increased by more than 44% from 25.3 million tons in 15-16 to 36.6 million tons. This is a positive aspect. But we should remember that even though there has been an increase in production, it just meets less than half of the India's edible oil demand. And India has an annual oil demand of 25 million tons of edible oil, of which only 10.5 million tons are supplied from domestic production, and the remaining 60% is supplied by imports. Therefore, whatever happens in the international market or the countries from where India imports, India bears the brunt and is affected by it. At the moment, the prices of oilseeds and edible oil in the international market are at record highs. Therefore, this is affecting the domestic prices. Let us look at the reasons for the high international prices. Now, Malaysia and Indonesia are the biggest global exporters of palm oil, and the prices in these countries have raced up since past year. Let us see what are the reasons. The palm oil sector is very labor intensive, and Malaysia, one of the world's largest palm oil exporting country, is dependent on migrant laborers. Now, because of COVID-19, since the borders have been closed, there have been shortage of workers, and this has affected production in Malaysia. Also, the biodiesel programs, the mandate many countries are giving to blend percentage of vegetable oil in industrial fuel is having its effect on price rises. This is due to the demand in the biodiesel programs from the fuel companies. Brazil and United States have been major producers of soya bean, and the international price of soya bean has risen by more than 80%. US and Brazil have also begun to use soya bean oil in renewable energy programs, indicating that this trend will persist even at the end of COVID. China is also buying soybeans heavily after its vaccination drive and a boom in the economic recovery. This is also a big reason for increase in prices because of the increase in demand from China. The shock is that this comes at a time when India is hurt by decrease in income levels and loss of employment have been both damaged by the pandemic, with many millions operating at tighter budgets and facing rising costs. So then what is the relief? The immediate relief one way is that there can be decrease in import tariffs, boosting production. However, this is a long-term measure. Providing subsidized edible oil. This will help the poorer sections of the society, and cracking down of hoarding so that there is no cartelization and hoarding of the edible oils, which leads to price rise. The next important topic is SC tells the panel to fix the minimum water level at Mulla Periyar Dam. We have seen that this dam has always been an issue because of the height, and also it has been a topic of discussion, especially during the summer season when there is shortage of water and heavy rainfall season. Now, the SC has asked the supervisory committee to take a firm decision on the maximum water level to be maintained in the dam, as it is concerned with the protection of life and property. There has been a petition filed at the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court has said this with regard to this petition. Now, the Supreme Court, as I said, was hearing a petition. Due to heavy rains in Kerala, the water level has been rising, and the petitioner said that the lives of around 50 people could be in danger if Mulla Periyar Dam has a higher water level. Kerala has pleaded that the water level should not be raised beyond 139 feet, as was directed by the Apex Court in August 2018 when the state was hit by floods. Let me tell you that the present water level is 137.2 feet. Now, Kerala has also blamed Tamil Nadu for the sudden release of water from the dam by the Tamil Nadu government, and it says that this is the reason that it has experienced floods. It has said that out of the population of 3.48 crore, almost 1/6 of 54 lakh has been affected by the floods, and due to the Tamil Nadu government's action. On the other hand, Tamil Nadu has blamed Kerala because of the suffering that it has opened the 80 reservoirs and because of heavy rains, and this has caused the deluge. The top court has ordered the disaster management panel of the dam to urgently decide on lowering the water level. It has asked Tamil Nadu to lower the water level from 142 feet to 139. Mulla Periyar Dam is built in 1895 on the Periyar River. It is located in the Idukki district. It came under spotlight after the Kerala government has accused the Tamil Nadu recently. Now, the Tamil Nadu maintains the reservoir. The 18th century dam's full reservoir level stands at 152, and the 142 feet limit has been kept, keeping in the view its safety. There have been certain reports by expert panels which say that the old dam is there is a problem of disaster because of the age of the dam, and the water level should not be raised beyond a certain level. Let us look at few points in this. In 2007, an expert panel said that there were chances of the dam breaking if the water level was raised beyond 136. In 2009, the report by IIT Roorkee has said that the dam was likely to face a damage if an earthquake occurred of the magnitude of 6.5. In 2012, a 5-member Supreme Court committee chaired by the Chief Justice of India, former Chief Justice of India A.S. Anand, on the Mulla Periyar Dam had submitted its report, focusing on all aspects of the 123-year-old dam. Now it is to see what step Tamil Nadu will take and how relief will be brought to Kerala's concerns. The next most important is that actor Rajnikant has been given the Dada Saheb Phalke Award at the 67th National Film Awards ceremony. This is important from the art and culture point of view. Cinema being an important part of the culture of India. I've just given you a few points about the award. Dada Saheb Phalke Award is the highest award in Indian cinema. It is named after the father of Indian cinema, who directed India's first full-length feature film, Raja Harish Chandra, in 1913. It is presented annually at the National Film Awards ceremony by the Directorate of Film Festivals. Outstanding contribution, it is given for outstanding contribution in growth and development of Indian cinema. Now, the person is selected by a committee which consists of eminent personalities from the Indian film industry. The person is given a Swarna Kamal medallion, a shawl, and a cash prize of 10 lakh rupees. It was first presented to actress Devika Rani in 1969, who is acknowledged as the first lady of Indian cinema. Only 2 persons have been given the award posthumously, that is Prithviraj Kapoor and actor Vinod Khanna. And the last one is that a WMO report, World Meteorological Organization report, which has just come up just before the COP26, saying that the emissions of CO2, methane, etc. have been the global warming related gases have been higher than the average annual growth rate over the last decade. This comes at a time as the COP26 is going to be conducted, or there's going to be a meeting in just few days, and this report will reinforce the importance of reducing the greenhouse gases by all countries, and collective action is required. Few points that it has said. It says that for methane, the increase from 90 to 20 was higher than 18 to 19, and it is higher than the average annual growth rate over the last decade. Similarly, the same thing has been said for nitrous oxide. Concentration of carbon dioxide has reached 413.2 parts per million, and this is 149% the pre-industrial level. Methane is 262% higher, nitrous oxide is 123% higher, and human activities started disrupting the Earth's natural equilibrium. It says that half of the CO2 is emitted by human activities remains in the atmosphere, and the other half is taken up by the oceans and land ecosystem. It is also flat concern on the ability of the land ecosystems and oceans to act as sinks, as they may become less effective in the future. So this is a reminder to the countries that they have to act soon. And this brings me to the end of the important topics for today. Let me meet you tomorrow with another important list of topics. Until then, thank you and bye-bye.